Farm Rescue provides critical resources to family farms dealing with medical crises. Right now, 2 North Dakota families are getting some much-needed help. The Meckley family in Center, North Dakota, and the Sauer family in Langdon both have suffered health issues that have left them unable to farm their land. Rodney Meckley's leg was broken by a cow. Makes it tough to manage over 200 cattle, along with planting corn, oats, wheat, sunflowers. Brian Sauer usually grows soybeans, canola, and wheat by himself across 500 acres. He's currently undergoing cancer treatment. So Farm Rescue jumped in, bringing equipment and planting this season's crops for them so their families don't lose critical farm income.
Just the impact that this help, has on their operation and on just their overall well-being. It takes a heavy burden off of a lot of folks, and again, to talk about the bonds with the volunteers, they're lifelong friends after all this.
If you want to apply for help, volunteer, or support, we have a link under this story on our free VNL News app.